telling us it's recording. All right, so I'm Darcy Hubbard. I'm the Executive Director of Fairfax CASA, and I am very lucky to have with me today Bob Stewart. Bob is one of our former CASA volunteers. He was here when I joined the organization in 2014. He recently retired from CASA work, but he and two other gentlemen that had been here for a long time, when I came on, I nicknamed them my three wise men, because they were the people that I look to very often, and they've been amazing. And Bob has been generous with his time and his and everything for Fairfax CASA. So I'm going to ask him a couple questions and get some information from Bob. So Bob, why did you become a CASA volunteer to begin with?
Well, I was ready to retire from my full-time job, and I was looking for something to do that would be useful. And I happened to be lunching with a friend and told him I was searching around, and he said, "Have you heard about CASA?" And I said, "No." Well, he had a good friend who had been involved with Fairfax CASA and had spoken highly of it. So I said, "Well, I'll go out and try an interview. Can't cost anything. Why not?" Well, after the interview, I was sufficiently intrigued that I said, "Well, let's do the training and see where that goes." And from then on, I was a CASA, and I still consider myself a CASA, although what we're talking about was 20 years ago.
And do you know how many kids do you think you served?
Oh gosh, Darcy, I don't know.
I don't either off the top of my head. I know it was a lot.
A dozen or so at least, I would think.
And I know you keep in touch with a couple of your families and a couple.
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some adults now who were children then that I got to know when I was a CASA, and they have stayed in touch with me. And I went to one of them's high school graduation down in Southern Virginia a couple years ago, and they call and stay in touch by phone quite frequently.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So during that time when you were a CASA, what do you think the most rewarding part of it was for you?
Well, I can illustrate that, Darcy, by reflecting back on a case that I had, probably one of the more memorable ones, that involved a baby girl. And when I say baby, I mean almost a newborn, who was accidentally scalded and taken to the emergency room by her parents, who in the emergency room immediately transported her to Children's Hospital in the district, where it was determined that yes, she had been scalded, but she had also been damaged in other awful ways that I won't specify. And she was always, in my mind, in my heart, baby in her name, baby somebody. Well, about 3 years later, I'd worked on with baby and her aunt and uncle. And her aunt and uncle decided to adopt her. And I was invited to the formal adoption ceremony in the court. And the judge took baby, put her in the judge's seat, gave her a gavel. And to see that little then 3-year-old grin and giggle and bang the gavel up on the judge's seat, that's a payoff that I'll never forget. It is the ability, I think, Darcy, to take kids who are in very unfortunate circumstances, which is what brings them to the attention of the court in the first place, and to deal with them in such a way as to try, at least, to implant hope in them that the future will be better than the past has been. And if you can do that, and I think I pat myself on the back, I think in many cases was able to do that, which is why, in part at least, why some of my former kids still call and want to talk and stay friends.
What a story. That's really what it's all about, right? Like we get these kids, and the goal really isn't to make it perfect. I mean, I wish we could, but the goal isn't to make it perfect. The goal is really to just make it better,
Right.
give them hope. And it's a great example, right, of happy ending. And that's
Well,
probably close to perfect. I'll take that.
no, you'll never get perfect, but as you say, if you can implant in their minds the belief that things will get better,
Mhm.
and that they're not going to stay awful, they'll get better, and they'll get better if they try and if they cooperate with the CASA volunteer, with the social workers, with their adoptive parents, if they're adopted, whatever. That's a gift that we can give them that really matters.
So now that you are officially retired from
Yeah.
CASA volunteer, I will say that you continue to support us in other ways, and your generosity has been truly exceptional. And I always say we live in Northern Virginia, where there's a million nonprofits. There's a million
Right.
lobbying groups. I mean, this is like kind of the home of nonprofits. Why do you gave a lot of time and energy to the program. I mean, most people would say I gave a lot, but you continue to give to us in other ways financially. And why is that? Why do you continue to support the program?
I have believed for a long time that CASA did more for me than I ever did for it. And I am trying to pay back to CASA some of what the benefit that I got, because what CASA gave to me were years of sometimes frantic activity. There were times when I was working more than one case at a time, and I was on the road a lot going, I had children in Baltimore, I had children practically in West Virginia. But I loved doing it. And even though I'm not doing it anymore, I love remembering it. And I think what CASA does is invaluable to hundreds of kids who really need CASA's help.
Yeah.
So that's why I keep doing it.
You are amazing, Bob. You were the first CASA I met.
Really?
Yep. You were the first CASA I met, and I don't know if you remember this, but it was just such a strange, weird coincidence. But you were talking about the child that you were currently working with.
Right.
The name sounded awfully familiar to me. And I don't even live in Fairfax. I live in a different county. And lo and behold, the child that you were the CASA for was in my daughter's class. And I had just gone on a field trip with that child and sat with that child and spent all this time with this child. And then I started this job. And I didn't know the child was in foster care at the time. I just was on a field trip with him, and it clicked. And then he started, you told him, and he referred to me as Gracie's mom. Mrs.
Right.
Gracie's mom.
That's right. You were Gracie's mom.
Gracie's mom. That was just such an incredible, like, I felt like all the stars were aligned, right? Like,
Yeah, bet.
you were the first CASA that I met. So that was kind of neat. So I won't keep you much longer, but is there anything, we share that we're going to share this, and people are going to be watching this who maybe don't really know much about CASA, or maybe know a little bit, or are considering, what they're going to do for the end of the year for their annual giving. So is there anything that you would say to anybody who's watching, that if you could, impart some wisdom, or if you would want them to know something about CASA, is there anything you would add?
I would just say to anybody who has some time that they can donate and is looking for something to do that is worth doing, not everybody's going to join CASA, but it's worth the time to explore it and find out about it. Go in and talk to Darcy. Go in and talk to some of the supervisors, the people who work with these cases day after day. Find out what it's about. And if it suits you, then do it like I did.
And I'm glad you did it.
Me too.
I'm glad. I'm very lucky that you were one of my wise men and that you're still supporting us. And I'm so grateful.
Okay.